The first catastrophic event involving kid killers we'll analyze occurred in 1998 at the Westside Middle School in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Here is where Andrew Golden and Mitchell Johnson became mass murderers and were merely charged as minors, though let's note here that they were merely 11 and 13 years old. Johnson took his parents' car, and the boys broke into Golden's grandparents' house the day before. They stole his grandfather's guns. Then on the following day, Golden regularly attended school while Johnson hid nearby and prepared the weapon. Then Golden pulled the school's fire alarm, and he met up with his friend outside. While all the school's students and teachers remained outside, the two kids opened fire, and they killed 5 people. At this time, it was the second deadliest U.S. school shooting. Arkansas law mandated that these 2 boys be released on their 21st birthday with their records sealed. These 2 boys are presently the only 2 murderers by school shooting in the U.S. who abide free outside prison walls. Note, since his release in 2007, Mitchell has once been arrested for an illegal possession of a firearm. Now, is it fair for them to be released on their 21st birthday with their criminal record sealed from public view? I mean, let's remember, they were merely 11 and 13 years old at the age of this crime. I mean, and children at this age fail to grasp the serious level and reality of such an event. Of course, by the time they're released, they would have already spent nearly a decade in the juvenile system. Therefore, if this was Europe, perhaps it would have helped them develop properly. But in the States, this will most likely just turn kids into lifelong violent criminals. Although, yet, that doesn't seem to be the case here, as these boys have abstained from any further violence towards others that we know of anyhow. Next up is the 2011 case of Christian Fernandez, who was a 12-year-old, and he murdered his 2.5-year-old half-brother by repeatedly smashing his head off a wooden bookshelf. Though originally charged as an adult, he found sympathy in the eyes of the judge, who eventually sentenced him to just 7 years in a juvenile detention center and released him after 5 years. This decision caused outrage with some. Nonetheless, when this kid was taken into custody, he said while beating his brother to death, he was truly thinking about his father, and it had nothing to do with his little brother. At the time, Christian had a slightly visible black eye and some other bruises, and upon a further investigation, it was determined he suffered long-term sexual abuse at the hands of his own father, who was only 25 years old. Not only that, but his mother was a mere 12 years older than the boy, and she had admitted leaving him alone with the 2.5-year-old. And this wasn't the first time that her and the dad had left these kids home alone unattended. The judge also threw out the police interrogation and confession by Christian on the grounds that the 12-year-old didn't understand his Miranda rights or what it meant to confess without a lawyer present or seeking an attorney's advice beforehand. And this is probably true with almost all child arrests.
Anything, and you don't have to say anything, but you can say something. So it just tells you that you don't have to. Do you understand what that means? So read it again. You do not have to make a statement or say anything. So that means you don't have to talk to me, but I want you to talk to me, but you don't have to talk to me. Okay? So, what did you do to David tonight? Tell me what happened. So, what happened tonight? So, just tell me a little bit more about what happened tonight, and then we'll be done. What was your mom doing when this happened?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe I'm driving.
Was she home or no? Where was she at?
Taking my brother to school. I mean, I'm not sure where she was.
Okay, because this happened tonight, so you couldn't have been taking your brother to school. Because it's going to be late, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't home when it happened? Did she make you babysit your brothers and sisters a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you think? Did 5 years serve justice? He had to be taken away from the family anyhow. Maybe he would have been better off just going into a foster care. But who wants to take on this kid? Now, in a more infamous case from England, Redeeming Truth presents the two 10-year-old boys, Venerables and Thompson, John Venerables and Robert Thompson, who kidnapped 2-year-old James Bulger outside a butcher shop in a mall in Kirby, England. The 2-year-old's body was later found, 2 days later to be specific, 2 days later outside of Liverpool, just outside of Liverpool, laying on train tracks after the train had ran him over. That must have looked nice. Although the train was not the cause of death, as the two 10-year-old boys repeatedly beat Bulger and even sodomized him with an instrument of some kind, I assume. Now, both these boys were sentenced to be confined until adulthood, charged as minors. Venerables was later arrested again 10 years after his release, though, now in 2011. And what he was arrested for, though, was downloading and sharing child pornography. Also, in a similar case as the James Bulger murder, we have kid killers from 1994 happening in Trondheim, Norway, where 5-year-old Silje Ridegard, please excuse me if I failed to pronounce the 5-year-old Norwegian girl's name properly, but more importantly, she was horribly beaten to death by 2 little boys. Nevertheless, unlike in England, with the James Bulger murder causing uproar throughout the media, and especially in the local community, causing many citizens desiring to see these boys punished severely as adults within the judicial system, this was not the case in Norway. Of course, much grieving took place after the 5-year-old girl's life was taken from her, but the 2 child murderers were treated more as victims of problematic mental health issues and less like murderers who required severe punishment. This is typical in the Scandinavian countries, but recently their extreme liberal laws and behaviors have been causing their children extreme turmoil, and these countries have been suffering mass rapes since the large Muslim immigration of primarily Somalians and other Africans who travel through the now chaotic, lawless lands of Libya. That is, after the United States, under President Obama, waged warfare in Libya and annihilated the nation and all the peace within. Plus, also from the lands of southern Syria, we have immigration, where Israel has recently employed warfare with the help of their ISIS mercenaries to extend her borders while ethnically cleansing the neighborhoods and towns, transporting the Arab population into Europe, though we'll have to save this talk for another documentary. We should also now mention a case from Mount Morris Township, Michigan. This is our 7th child killer mentioned. His name was Diedrich Owens, a 6-year-old. Now, on February 29th in the year 2000 AD of our Lord, he fatally shot classmate Kayla Rowland, another 6-year-old. But because of Owens' age and lack of intent, he was never charged with murder. Instead, his punishment was to be expelled from the school, and he was sent off to live with family. This was a case from Michigan, America. Take a look at Lionel Tate, who committed murder in 1999 at the age of 12. Tate was the youngest American citizen ever to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, originally anyhow. He was left alone with 6-year-old Tiffany Eunuch, who was being babysat by Lionel's mother. After 45 minutes of playing with the little girl, Tate told his mom that she wasn't breathing because he was wrestling with her. In fact, her injuries ranged from a lacerated liver to a fractured skull, broken rib, and a swollen brain. Tate had stomped on the little girl until she succumbed to her injuries. His life sentence was extremely controversial as he was so young to receive such a penalty. The conviction was eventually overturned in 2004 on the basis that his mental competency had not been completely evaluated before the trial. He was released on 1 year's house arrest and 10 years probation. He has committed further crimes since and is currently serving 10-year sentence in prison. But he's due release in 2018, which has already occurred. Okay, now for this next case, we'll travel to Brazil and raise the age a little bit to 16 years old, as we'll discuss a case in Santa Catarina, Brazil. Daniel Petri, a 16-year-old boy, murdered his 12-year-old friend Gabriel Kuhn, who he lent money in the form of in-game video game funds. But apparently these funds didn't get paid back within the desired time frame. Therefore, Petri first raped the younger boy, Thereafter, he began sawing off the kids' limbs, which led to the determined cause of death, which was blood loss. So Petrie, being just 16 years of age himself, was charged as a juvenile, supposed to America, where he most likely would have been charged as an adult. Even though I believe he's clearly not an adult at 16, this is kind of an extreme case here. Anyhow, he was sentenced to a 3-year jail sentence. At 16, even Petrie didn't get locked up until he was 21. By the way, just as fact here, Brazil has nearly 60,000 murders a year compared to the States, which has only 15,000, and the U.S. has 60% more people than in Brazil. Okay, on this next case, we're going to talk about Sajal Baruai from India. Sajal Baruai at age 15. Although we're going over the 9 kid killers here because this is actually a group of 5 kids. 4 of his kids helped him with this murder. But basically, we'll focus on this one 15-year-old because it was his family that they murdered. The friend said it was an act of revenge to help Sajal for the suffering of abuse that he suffered at home by the hands of his family. I don't know. Suppose his brother was involved with this too, and his mother. Who knows? The Night of Terror occurred on November 22nd, 1993, when the 5 youths hacked Sajal's father, his stepmother, and half-brother to death over the span of a few hours. Sajal stayed at home all night with the mutilated bodies, and he called his neighbor the next day while his friends were at school. He initially told police somebody had broken in and knocked him unconscious and killed his family. However, under heavy police questioning and interrogation, he had admitted what he'd done, and he timed out all his friends as well. So the teens were arrested, they were tried as adults, convicted, and received the death penalty. Their death sentences were later overturned, though, and they all received life imprisonment. Now, Sajal did serve about 7 years at the time that he managed to escape, 2001. And then he was only apprehended about 2 years later, again in 2003 after committing a robbery. So he later turned to suicide and attempted killing himself by setting himself ablaze in the prison cell. That didn't work. And then later, in 2010, Sajal and his attorneys filed a new plea under the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection Act, the Amendment Act of 2006. Therefore, Sajal was released on bail pending his new hearing, and he was granted permanent release. I mean, that was only after he spent roughly a second 7-year stretch in prison, which is a lot of time inside some scummy Indian prison. Nevertheless, he was free for about 2 years in between, and that life sentence just ended real quick one day. So he made out all right, considering. Although he probably wishes he never set himself on fire once he got released permanently. Okay, that's it. On the next Times 9 video, we'll check out 9 kid killers who were charged as adults and see if you guys out there think that it was justifiable, their decisions, their sentences. There's a wide selection of free books and videos on different topics, all non-mainstream information at redeemingtruth.com.